The Smokey and Volpe Trial. I woke up very early in the morning to a sudden but continuous knock on the front door of my house. When I went to check who was the noise intruder on my front door, I realized there was not a single soul. Nothing but a small wrinkly yellow tinted envelope. It looked like one of those old Bible pages that turn yellow with the passing of time. It smelled like smoke or scorching coals, ashes even for some reason. The corners of the paper were burned like an old-fashioned. Great attention to details, I thought. I opened it up, cautious and curiously. Then I held my breath when I realized what it was. I felt thrilled when I realized what it was. It was an invitation. Earlier this month I took part in a peculiar raffle online. It was held at a forum about old-fashioned and Victorian buildings here in Santiago. They were offering a night to stay at La Reine Palace, and I couldn't contain my excitement. But what bugged me was that despite being a raffle, no one asked for funding and only 10 people could participate. The only requirement for us participants was to send through written mail a printed document with our signature, ensuring that we wanted to have an experience of a lifetime to the palace location. I thought it was very cheesy. So out of everyone, I guess I got to be the lucky one. When I read the complete envelope, I noticed that the whole invitation was not only about a night to stay, but it was a celebration for the upcoming night of the San Juan on the 23rd of June. That meant this exact same night. It is kind of annoying how little information about the celebration at the palace was described on the forum of the envelope. I only knew I had to be there at midnight. On top of that, the fact that they were not capable of sending the invitation earlier, nor announcing a winner for the raffle, is really disappointing. But nevertheless, I had to be there tonight. I won the invitation, and I have always been interested in the beauty of these old gloomy-looking places that hid so many stories between their walls and have survived the passing and weight of time, year by year. I went back to bed and spent the rest of my day with normality. In the evening, I prepared myself for the event. I turned on the TV while I was dressing myself. I had to wrap myself up in warm clothes and carry an umbrella since it was starting to rain and the clouds looked menacing. On the TV, the news were talking about the anniversary of a missing young man that has not been seen since last June on Santiago. I didn't pay much attention since many thoughts were swarming my head, like how lucky for winning the raffle I was, or how spooky is to go alone to an old palace during a stormy night to celebrate the night of San Juan. A night full of mysticism and pagan rituals. I have never believed in those things anyway. I arrived just in time at 12 as I checked on my cell phone. The door to the palace was open, which was kind of odd since there was heavy rain outside. I took cover from the rain with my umbrella and stood under an enormous fig tree that grew outside the palace. Shivering, I made my way in, still feeling cold inside of the corridor, thinking that probably the hosts were inside and had started with the celebration, but there was no one to be seen on the first corridor at least, not even the bottle. I opened the door and fell to the ground. Something struck me. I surely took a look and saw a guy in a dusty old-looking bottle costume. I wanted to ask him for directions, or in which place of the palace was the celebration being held. But he sprinted as fast as he could, leaving the palace and disappearing on the distance. I thought to myself, maybe he had to go to the bathroom. I laughed, but I noticed how a tall old lady on a black cloak approached me from inside the room. I opened where the boy was. She had a candle lamp that instantly lit the entrance corridor where I was standing. A big old wooden clock carved into the door I just opened caught my attention. It looked very old, but it was still ticking. The lady waved at me and told me to come into the room and that the guests were waiting for me ahead. I waved back at her and followed her lead. I crossed the door and could not help but notice a strong whiff of smoke and coal that came from the lady's cloak, and how I was no longer freezing once I stepped myself into the next room. There was not a fire nor chimney nearby, but the change in temperature was very drastic. Strange, I thought, but I didn't pay that much attention. I was too concentrated and fascinated about the place, that lady's welcome speech in her costume. A black velvet cloak and dress covered her thin white greyish body. The tips of the cloak seemed to be burned. Maybe she walked too near a chimney? I don't know. She told me that she was the housekeeper of the palace, and every night of San Juan they would invite someone through a special raffle. As we approached a locked door, I heard some classic music being played at the distance. Across the door, which the lady opened up using a rusty key from her pockets, I saw a bunch of people in odd-looking costumes enjoying dinner on an open roof garden that was lit by the moonlight and some candles. There were even musicians playing classical music on the corner of the room. Above them, the most beautiful starry and clear sky rested like a midsummer night. Everyone looked as if they were people from the Victorian era. I felt so out of place, but the housekeeper told me to not worry about it, since later I would be able to pick my favorite costume, just like the ones those people are wearing. How kind, I thought. I was invited to dine and took a seat. I could not resist chitting and making questions to the guests around me. They looked like they were so into this role-play thinging that after a while I said, "So, were you all invited too? Did you all decide to dress up for this visit? If so, I'm so nervous. I had no idea this was a costume party." The people around me looked in a way, and a lady with a big hat said,
"Oh, my silly youngling, we all live here. And what are these costumes you are talking about? This is what we wear for dinner. And in that case, you are wearing a costume, the weirdest costume I have ever seen before. And in my humble and important opinion, of course, it is of very, very poor taste, my dear."
I felt awkward by her response. I thought, even though they are role-playing, they are being a little bit mean in this facade about living in a place that keeps going on is getting on my nerves. And where are the damn clouds? Wasn't it supposed to rain for the whole night? The sky looked menacing. I'm not very comfortable. I made call my mother to see if she can come pick me up. I reached for my cell phone inside my pockets, but I couldn't find it. Perhaps I lost it by mistake when I fell onto the floor. Oh gosh, I might as well go look for it. I stood from the table without asking for permission, since I was too uncomfortable, and walked to the corridor. Out of the Ruffles garden, As I was searching for the other room where I fell, I ran into the housekeeper. I asked her if she could open the door to the entrance corridor since I needed my cell phone, and she said,
Cell phone? Here we do not have those.
I started to get tired of the out-of-nowhere role-play of these people and told her, well, if you're not going to help me, at least could you open the door to the entrance corridor? I want to leave. I am very uncomfortable. The lady looked at me straight into the eyes and said,
You know there is no leaving here, no possible exit, right? From the moment you send your signature to the knock on the door and the Smokey envelope, you sealed your fate, kid.
I was starting to get scared and confused, so I uttered in desperation, What do you mean? As I started to freeze and hear rain hitting in the roof and the cobblestones of the garden in the palace, the temperature went back to how it felt on this first corridor, and the lady firmly said,
You are ours now. Weren't you starving for an experience of a lifetime? You are part of the palace now, just as how they all were back then.
The lady pointed straight to the table in the garden, where the people used to be. Now a bunch of humid skeletal corpses remain where on top of the chairs, lit by the dim candle lights that are bound to go extinct from the water droplets splashing to the table. She let out a giggle and continued,
You are so naive. I wasn't lying when I said you could choose your favorite costume. The problem is you'll have to undress them, so have fun with that.
In shock and panic, I started to cry and shout, What the hell is going on? What am I supposed to do? Is this some sort of fever dream? Look at me with disgust, the lady said.
Well now, it is your choice. Make your move, kid. You can either give up like them and stay here until you become cold and hard as a rock for eternity, but enjoying luxuries in a different dimension.
The lady pointed at the corpses in old party costumes sitting in the garden.
Or you can be smart and try hard enough to complete this trial, like the one that got away about an hour ago, and bring me new faces. It's your move, child. Time is ticking and I'm getting hungry.
As she said this, she removed her cloak, revealing his true form. The hoops, the horns, the signed paper, the smoky scent, and the missing young man and the guy that I ran into were enough for me to finally understand I was not dreaming.